There was a barbecue place in town that I'd introduced myself to, and they honored and respected me because every time, I found out later, every time I'd walk in and say, "Hey, preacher," real loud, and it was a code to everybody in the room. Don't say anything bad, the preacher's here.
Today, we have Dr. Ken Drawn, the superintendent of our Alabama Ministry Network, and I'm Michael Harris. I'm just a missionary that works with churches, travels the district, and sees a lot of things, and I have questions, and I think the best person to come to with questions about these is our superintendent, Pastor Ken. So thank you for doing this, and hopefully we'll be doing more of these as these go forward.
Absolutely. I'm excited about this. You know, I love taking the opportunity to have a conversation and talk about church. That's who we are. We are the church.
We are, and Alabama has a lot of vibrant, healthy churches. One of the things I've gotten to do, we both are from Mobile, and so and part of this job that I get to do now is actually discovering how big our state is, how diverse, and even culturally.
Absolutely.
The Demopolis section is not the Tennessee Valley section. And the Enterprise section is not the Mobile section. So it's fun to see. And a lot of that for me traveling is I see a lot of things that I think that you have wisdom and the things you can speak to. So I just have a couple of questions today to start off and just see where this conversation goes, if that's good with you.
And I love it. And Michael, you know, I know you get a pulse because you're out so many places and meet with so many people. One of the things I love about this fellowship we call the Assemblies of God is the diversity. Mm-hmm. Because we don't all do church the same. We culture, you know, the local culture is different from place to place, even across our state. Amazingly, in Alabama, you're not the same all over the state as people outside think we are. So I love to celebrate that diversity. We don't have to act the same everywhere, but we agree on 16 things that make us who we are and the fundamentals of faith. So, you know, I celebrate this. I love hearing stories from you about different churches and how they do things. So I think we can have fun with this.
Yes, like just for example, in the past 7 days, I've been in Huntsville, Alabama, and between Brantley and Elba. I don't even know what you'd call between Brantley and Elba, but that is two different cultures. But I think this question here was apply to both of them. Now, I was on staff with your former youth pastor, Pastor Jenkins, at Moffett Road for years, and he did really good about teaching us about this and allowing us to do some of these things. But one of the things I see that could be very helpful is understanding pastoral function. Like there is the pastoring, the shepherding, the preaching, and we know those that we teach get taught in Bible college and in global. But there's also the how do we be a pastor in our community and to our people. And I think there's some insight, whether you're urban or rural. For instance, what really started me on this is I was working with a church, and the pastor there had been there maybe 2 weeks, and someone in that congregation had passed away, and he was a new pastor, and the church was coming around and planning the funeral, and he was saying, "Sure, I'll just show up and do you'll tell me what I need to do." And I think, I came back to you, this is a couple years ago, and said, we need to show them. So what are some ways in that moment that you can step up into something as a funeral and be a pastor when people are looking for a pastor?
Right. You know, I think the great teacher in how to be a pastor, and we know where that comes from, that word is derived, and, you know, we don't get into all that, but it's derived from shepherd, mm-hmm. which Jesus Christ is the chief shepherd. He's the shepherd. We're under shepherds. So I think it's a pastoral thing, a shepherding thing. And, you know, funerals, three of the key things that people looking for in a church and a pastor is when they have a birth, mm-hmm. a marriage, mm-hmm. and a funeral. They're looking for their pastor to show up. So if you are a pastor, and many of the guys that will see this, they're already doing this. They know what to do. Mm-hmm. But I think we all want to pass on to the guys who are learning. What do you do? How do you serve a family in loss? Because a family is going through a grieving, brokenness time. And it's not just about funeral food or flowers or showing up in an event. It's a time to come in and minister to bring healing. You know, a shepherd, when a sheep was hurt, they would come in and put the salve on there and they would take care of. And so I think as a pastor, you don't treat a funeral like, oh, no, man, this is going to ruin my schedule. Think about what it did to that family. That family's bruised and broken and wounded, and now's the time they need their pastor to come in and love them. You can't go fix it. You don't go give them the answers. You know, I've had people so many times. I remember one time I was at USA in Mobile making visits, and a nurse runs out that knew me and said, "Oh, Pastor Drone, I need you. Come quickly, come quickly." And a family who the daughter had just had a wreck in another state. She had been south flight to USA, and she lost the baby in the process. She was pregnant. So all they wanted me to do is sit in a room with a family that was going to hold a baby who had already passed and just love those people and help them. I couldn't fix that for them. I couldn't do anything. I could only be present and let them know I'm here, but the chief shepherd is closer than me, and he'll minister to your heart, to your situation. So as a pastor, you're going to represent the chief shepherd, not just your church, not just your name or title, but you're going to go represent the chief shepherd. Jesus would go in. Look at what he did in the Bible where there was loss. He would go in and minister. So as a pastor, understand, and I don't know how many times I would go and do a funeral and minister to people. I would later see people show up in my church because they said, "Hey, you know what? If you love these people like that, we want to come see you and know more about you." So understand, we don't do it for that reason. But if you'll go be an under shepherd and represent Christ and your home church, your body, to minister to hurt, bruised, and broken and wounded people, then he'll take care of the rest.
Well, I think that is, even in our culture now, the role of pastors are getting less and less recognized, but there's still these moments that even people that won't recognize you as a pastor, even if you've been at the church for a while and they just say you're a preacher, you're Sunday morning, but they don't let you into their lives to shepherd, to pastor, to speak truth. In these moments, like you said, a birth, there's expected the pastor will come and they look at you as a pastor.
They want you to celebrate with them.
And so that's an open door to be a pastor in a wedding, which can be its own own thing. But again, it's a moment to step in and pastor and do things, even if it's saying, "Hey, before we the ceremony, I'm gonna come by and pray with the bride and the groom." Even though that may not be on the list, you can talk to the wedding planner, and most people will allow that. And it's a chance for you as a pastor to be pastoral. So that opens the door for later. You don't know what even that prayer could do in being a pastor in that moment for later speak into their lives.
It's huge because you, as a pastor, as an under shepherd, you earn the right to be heard. You just because you are the pastor, that doesn't mean anything anymore. People are looking for real. They're looking for somebody who is authentic and real. So when we talk about funerals or weddings or births, we're talking about the guy who represents Jesus in the room, that Jesus loves them, but they can't physically touch Jesus, but you can let Jesus flow through you. I think these are like red letter events on the calendars of families. And if you will minister in those red letter events, then you earn the right to be the pastor, the shepherd of that family.
Yeah, because I've had the chance to do several weddings myself, and what cracks me up is the way to get into wedding photos is to be the minister at the wedding, because you will be right there. Yeah. And as they go back and look at photos, that moment and what you say and do in those moments will last, because they'll see the pictures, which is kind of funny in some ways, but also is a good memory that like you are imprinting in these time of needs, and you get to be Jesus in those moments. So would you say that you should, well, you may not go looking for things, you don't want to just marry anybody, or you don't want to go looking for funerals either, but when these happen, you should definitely open the door to see what how he can use you in these moments?
Well, I think there was a teaching in the Bible, and it spoke about hirelings. You know, there's a difference between taking ownership and just being a hireling. If you don't like funerals, you don't like weddings, you don't like these things, you probably may not have the calling you think you have, because it's important to understand. I read a book several years ago, and I was trying to think of the author just a minute ago, but the name of it is Escape from Church, Inc., or Church Incorporated. And the whole thing is we seem to have had a mission drift to go from being the shepherd to the CEO. And the CEO is the guy who is the chair of the meeting, runs the organization, which that's cool. We have to treat church somewhat like a business, but it's God's business. It's not like a regular corporation. And, someone laughingly said one time, we've become a nonprofit corporation. And when we said nonprofit, meaning the prophet, like the Bible prophet, we need to get the man of God back in the picture. We need to get the representative of Jesus. So I think if you want to really minister to your people and to a community, is just kind of hang out with Jesus and learn how he did it. And you say, yeah, but he did it back in the first century. But I'm telling you, there are so many principles of what happened in that first century that still work in this century. And we need to realize we don't do away with it because it's way back there 2 centuries ago. We still have to shepherd God's people.
Well, something you said gave me two different things I want to follow up on because I didn't even think about this before. But like where you said, most of these guys know we're talking to people that have maybe done lots of wedding steps, but maybe they're now pastoring a larger church. And when I say larger, that may be 200, where it's starting to get where you can't do everything. But these are moments that are important. But what about like Pastor Jenkins did for us? How would you walk out bringing on staff pastors? Because you can't just say to a novice pastor, here, go do this funeral or go do this wedding or go this. But it's also important that if you let them do that. Like there are people that did not look at me as a pastor until I showed up and did the part of a funeral,
right,
or did a wedding. So how do you bring staff guys along so you still can be the pastor because they expect you to be a part, but also bring your staff guys along so they can start earning that kind of trust?
Absolutely. Well, one of the things you want to do, remember, here's another thing. We've gotten so modern and so advanced that we think we've outrun the things that we need. And one of the things, if you go back New Testament, and a few years ago I did this on one of our tours, is where has Paul gone? Timothy's looking for you. We need the Paul-Timothy concept back. The pastor's got to think of himself as a Paul in the life of his team because he wants to grow them. He wants to mature them. He wants that leadership pipeline to be flowing. And what I would recommend, what I did many times, is I would, first of all, coach your team ahead of time. Let them know how these things are done, weddings, funerals, or whatever you may be doing. As a pastor, you get to dedicate houses and businesses. I've dedicated cars and tractors. I mean, people, you say, wait, what do you mean? Well, it's just people's feelings. This belongs to God. I belong to God. This belongs to God. So, yeah, I've done a lot of things. I've prayed for animals. It's just amazing. But, hey, if you love people, you're going to love them through what they're loving. So you take your team and you coach them ahead of time on your idea, your philosophy, your mindset on how we do these things in the church. And then I think the principle of Jesus was, come on and do this with me. Watch me, and then let's go do it together. And then I'm going to let you do it, and I'm going to watch you. And I think there's this thing of it's on-the-job training, apprenticeship, whatever you want to call it. I'm thankful that I had a lead pastor who did that for me, and I passed that on to my guys. And you want to do that. You want to raise up a team, and you want your spiritual and leadership DNA to be in them.
Yeah, I know for me how that was that we had a funeral coming up, and Pastor Jenkins is like, I'm doing this and this, but Michael, when we get to the graveside, I want you to do the graveside. Here's some key verses that we go from. And then gravesides are great because really all you do is you pray, you keep it to like 2 words, and then you pray and you go. So it's a great 5-minute thing, but then it gives you so much experience to step on. Then I actually ended up doing some family members that did gravesides. Of course, then the guy that was doing this is in Southwest Alabama over there, and this family member, and they set it all up, and he walked to me and said, preacher, we put you in the sun so that you wouldn't go that long. But I'd already been trained not to go along at the graveside, so it worked out great.
Well, yeah, again, it's an evolving that takes place in the ministry. I went into a church of 35 people, but when we left there, we had over 1,000. And there is a growth and evolving thing that goes along in the church world, and you want to kind of flow with that and make that. One of the things mentioned earlier, and might have been before we started talking, but hospital. When people have emergencies, they want their pastor. They want somebody to help them because, again, you're representing Jesus. They're going to call on Jesus, but you're the flesh and blood. You're fleshed out in that room or in that situation. And what I taught our guys was, if you're going to make a hospital call, go as part of this team, then go in there, let them know you love them, let them know the church cares, let them know the pastor and the family's praying for them, pray for them, and walk out. Because if people in the hospital, they're not at like a homecoming. They're not at something to where this is a class reunion, we're going to catch up. No, you go in there, you minister to them, let them know you care, and you walk away. Because they don't, if you can spend 2 hours with them, they're probably thinking, why do we need this guy at the church? He's got nothing to do.
Right. But you can also, I will say this to anybody, when you sit down with pastors, some of your best stories will come from funerals and weddings and hospital visits.
Absolutely.
Like the only time I've ever been called Father Michael was in a hospital setting because it was a friend of a coworker's who actually went to our church, and so they were Episcopalian, but they wanted someone to come pray. So I went in, and they said, "Oh, Grandpa, here's Father Michael," and that was.
Many guys think they are measured by what they say in the pulpit.
Mm-hmm.
But the greatest measurement of leadership is not in the pulpit. Anybody can be a communicator, but not everybody can live out Christ to a community.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just in the pulpit. I've spent nights at a hospital where there's an emergency and somebody was going to die. Because, hey, you say, but you said go in quickly. There's a difference between someone who had a toenail taken off and then someone who's got a 20% chance to live. So you have to measure that, and what are you needed for? You have to be able, if you love your people. Again, I remember somebody said, but man, I love the ministry. It's just these people that's driving me crazy. Well, people are people. Sheep are sheep. Sheep bite. Sheep have fleas. Sheep have ticks. Sheep are going to be sheep. But if you see the sign on the door, it says, it's the sheep, stupid. That's why we're there. We're shepherding people.
And experience helps you know when those moments are there. And if you're still learning, if you're a staff pastor, you have a lead pastor to lean on. If you're a new pastor in a section, your presbyter probably can give you advice about how to walk through some of those as well.
If you're a new guy on the block and maybe you don't have somebody to coach you, I remember when I went to Saraland and that few people, I found 3 guys in town that had thriving ministries and just asked them for 10 minutes. That I could go sit down and ask them 3 questions. And, Fred Wolf, who is an amazing guy, who is a legend in Mobile, Alabama, actually gave me that time and spoke into my life. I said, hey, as a new pastor, tell me the 3 most important things I ought to do. And I remember one of them is, number 1, love your people. And that's it. That's the key. If you'll love people, they'll love you back. And I think pastoring is all about being, I've said it so many times in this few moments, but, people can't touch Jesus, but they can touch you.
Right. No, it's good. And then the other thing I wanted to jump off to, we're talking about this, and I was trying to avoid nuts and bolts, but I think just the culture that we live in would be even if we could keep it very simple, because we could get lost in this, but talking about weddings. Weddings now can be such a blessing, but also small. I was going to say landmine, depending on that. So
many emotions are there.
Do you have any guardrails as far as because there's things that now people do at weddings that we wouldn't have done at weddings even 20 years ago, and that's not bad. It's just our personal convictions versus community. All that. So what are some guardrails?
Absolutely. I think up front, when even when you're doing premarital counseling or when you're getting ready. People ready.
Is that
for
a must, by the way? You will do premarital counseling.
Absolutely. I would not do a wedding unless it was an emergency situation, and we don't have time to get into that because we don't want to get into the weeds here. But it's so important that you do that, because if you're officiating a wedding, you're endorsing it. You're endorsing it. So the premarital counseling, and you don't have to do it. You can farm that out. You can use CDs, you can use online stuff. There's so much stuff there. Just make sure you get the ebb and flow of it and know that it's working, because most people are going to do it just to get married.
Right.
And then, we had a policy we gave people to do with weddings, whether it was on our side or not. Here are the things, because our theological philosophy is this. So therefore, here's how we do it. So if you're going to do anything beyond this, it's going to have to be after the ceremony and after I'm out of the building.
Right. So, and that's fine. That's one way to look at it. I know when I did the last wedding I I officiated is the correct term, was for family. And I didn't think they wanted me to do premarital counseling with them. And so like their local pastor did the premarital counseling, and then I officiated the wedding. And it was a special moment, but like when you say farm out, you can find someone, especially if it's a distance or whatever the case may be.
Absolutely.
You just want to kind of know what they're doing so you can at least have an
And
idea.
if you don't have the skill set for counseling, then you're doing them a disservice.
Right.
Because it's so important that, and again, they're wanting to get married. They're like crazy about that. So they'll do that, but you want to try to download into them some of the tools that can help them survive when they get married.
Yeah, I've had a couple of stories that I can, again, we'll end this with the weeds, is that people have gotten recommitted, and I would say salvation, but at least recommitted their life through premarital counseling,
Absolutely.
through understanding what
Absolutely.
marriage is in a biblical perspective. So this is an important piece that you can be Jesus in. You just need to have those guardrails and not be swayed. And I think you hit on this, but I want to double down. A written policy for your church so that is your protection, and it's the same every time so you don't
Right.
get trapped.
Yeah, and I think one of the first things I did in the interview process of a couple is I actually dug down into that spiritual side of where they're at. Ask them specifically if you're saved, if these things. That's so important, because what I tell them is if you're going to get married, then you're going to need the help of the Holy Spirit. You're going to need the wisdom of God. You're going to need God on your side. Because if you try to get married in a secular way, then you don't even need me. I don't even need to be here, because I want to be a part of a holy ceremony. Mm-hmm. Because I look at how Scripture did it. The first marriage was performed by God Himself.
Right.
And so it's a holy ceremony, and you want to let people know, hey, this is where we're going. That's why any of the events you do in the wedding has got to be in light of Him. Mm-hmm. What does Christ think about what you're doing at this wedding?
Right. And a lot of what I've seen in my limited time, and you can speak more of this, when a bride and groom sit down, they understand like the reception, the flowers, the dresses, the suits, all of that, but they really don't understand the actual ceremony and the pieces there. So it's a chance to say, we're asking the Lord to come be a part of this.
Right.
We're asking for commitment and covenant and what that all means. So it's this great chance. And I don't want to get lost in the weeds, but yeah.
And it's getting so trendy now. Mm-hmm. Everybody hears they want this song, they want this thing, they want that, because it's trendy. But I tell them, hey, it's not Bill or Mary's or Sue's wedding, it's yours.
Right.
How do you want to represent? What do you want everybody out there to think about you and what you're doing?
Right. So that's good. And then I want to wrap this up as we're getting close here, because we talked about pastor function in our church, and you'd mentioned this before we sat down when I brought this up. Being a pastor in the community, especially when you first come to a community, can be so huge. And that's whether you're urban or rural, and it's two different ways. So let's talk about rural first, and then we'll come back to urban. Like when you come into a pastor in a rural community, there is so many opportunities to be involved in that community.
Absolutely.
So what are some of the things you would look for to get your good name in your church?
Absolutely. When you come into a community, we're talking about rural now, and how we define those things are so different in our fellowship. It's defined. But basically, we're saying you're not in a metropolitan, you're not in a suburban of a metropolitan, you're in more of a rural area. And I think the thing is, one, get to know the movers and shakers of the community. Mm-hmm. Your police chief, your fire chief, your principals of your schools, your bank president or manager, people in the community that know the community. I would walk in, and I did this. Saraland was less than 10,000 people when I went there, and by the AG, that would be rural now.
Right.
But it really was on the edge of Mobile. Mm-hmm. But I went into all these places and introduced myself. Said, hey, I'm Ken Drone. I'm the new pastor here, and I've just come to let you know that I want to love this community. I know you do. You're the mayor. You care about this community, and I'm just here to serve. Actually, ended up getting a police chaplain's job because of that. But you want to serve the community. So the best thing. And then the next layer I went to was businesses. Introduced myself to businesses and people there. And it's amazing. There was a barbecue place in town that I'd introduced myself to, and they honored and respected me, because every time, I found out later, every time I'd walk in and say, hey, preacher, real loud, and it was a code to everybody in the room. Don't say anything bad, the preacher's here. But you want to earn that. You want the community. You want to love your community. You want to let them know, hey, this is not some snotty guy over here. This guy came to see me. He cared. Right. He prayed for my family. He prayed for my business. He prayed for my city. So go earn the right to be heard.
Right. And so that in the rural setting, in some ways, I think they both have their plus and minuses, but there's usually much more openness because there's one city event, there's one
Yeah.
school, there's one thing. So going to an urban context, which again, rural and urban depends on how you define it. And I've seen guys, I've sit down with rural pastors and they want to argue who's more rural. Like if you have a
Yeah.
stoplight, if you just have a stop sign, anyway. So you could do it, but
I guess if you have a rural king in town, you're rural.
yeah. But then you go to the urban setting, it's similar, but it may be that you can. How would you break that down in an urban setting? I guess is where you're.
You know, pretty much what I've said. I even go to a little bit more. I went and introduced myself to pastors in the community as well to let them
Because
know.
in
hey,
urban, you'll probably have more pastors than
yeah,
that.
yeah, let them know. Hey, I'm in town. I just wanted to meet you. Hey, let's go have coffee. I called them up. Not everybody showed up, but we began to have a cross section of all brands, if you want to call it that. We'd catch coffee or breakfast together because, hey, we were all dealing with a lot of the same stuff.
Right.
Get people with you in the thing. City council meetings, you know, PTA or PTO or whatever they may call
Right.
it. And we would even, you know, we were a small church at that point, but we would still do cupcakes and cookies and take them to the lounge for the teachers. Introduce yourself. Make yourself a player in the community. I don't mean that in a negative way, but just you're there to love and care and shed light into the community. Well, if you don't turn your light on all over the place,
Right.
they won't know there's light.
Yeah, like we have a pastor in Alabama who says you can't name. I want to be in a place when you think of New Brockton, you think of Connect Church, and that's kind of true. But even on the herb, so I've seen this, and you can maybe walk this out better than I can. Like if I'm going into a city that has bigger people, like let's say 30, 40, 50,000 people, maybe I can, instead of going for the police chief, maybe I'll find what precinct I'm in.
Absolutely.
And work that precinct. Or same thing with that fire district. I'm sorry, fire people. I'm not sure what you call the fire precincts. They may be, I don't know, sorry. But like that kind of rural, like that one school, like the one middle school, one high school, one elementary school in your area.
Let them know you care about them if you want them to care about you. That's what you've got to do. And we did that, you know, in the police department, meeting the different people and just making yourself available to that community in any way is extremely, extremely important. When they have a push in town about trash pickup, get your people out there. Make yourself not somebody over here like, come on, you got to come. People don't come to you because you turn the light on at the church.
Right.
You have got to turn the light on in the community. You got to
Right.
take it out of the house.
And so as we're wrapping up on this, when you go out and do that as a pastor first, and you're doing all this, that way it can bring your church along with you, I'm assuming. Like, how do you make that, okay, I'm pastoring and I'm in this community, and you almost want to be a pastor of this community, but then also you're bringing your church so that they can be recognized. How do you bring your church along? Because you go first always as a pastor, and then
Yeah, you are the representative of your church. You know, you're the face of that church in so many ways. And, you know, we don't have time, but, you know, over the years that I spent there, we created more of this is who we are. When I left there, you know, the mayor called me crying and said, what are we going to do without you? That's what you want. You
Right.
want a mayor to call in tears and say, because you know you have made an imprint, not for Ken, but for Jesus. You want Jesus representing that community. So you just keep finding creative ways. And there's so many of them that are out there. Don't try to reinvent the wheel. You know, pay attention. There's guys out there that have great stuff you can do, but understand if they're selling palm trees and you're in Alaska, they won't grow there. So everything that's out there may not work in your place.
Right.
But look at it and say, hey, I can use this because I want to get the tools to be significant in my community and this community know if there's an emergency, if there's a need, we're close to 911.
right. And so, like, I guess the final thing is taking all this time about being a pastor to your people and those functions, they're there, but also in the community. In 30 seconds or less, can you really just how important and beneficial that is to sink or swim your ministry?
Absolutely. It's everything because you are who you are. And your people watch you. If you love the community, they're going to love the community. If you reach out and touch the community, then you pull them along with you. And I began to take volunteers with me and created this lifestyle within the church. We cared about this community, and we're going to invest ourselves in this. So I think that's it. You invest yourself in the community, and dividends will come back for the kingdom.
Well, that's just one of the many questions I have, and I feel like I've gotten good stuff. Hopefully that y'all have that are watching this have enjoyed it. And if there's something a question or a conversation you'd like to see happen, there's the comment section. So please let us know some things as we're trying to look at maybe doing this throughout the rest of 2025 and into 2026, and who knows what kind of conversations we can have, because again, we have a lot of people we can sit down with in this state.
Absolutely. And as we close the thing, I want to say is, hey, did I do it right? Did I do it? Absolutely not. But I just want to challenge you to do it.
Right.
That's the thing. Go do it. Don't just say, what do I need to do? Go invest yourself in your community.
Yeah. All right. And then this is going to be in August is when we saw. So I know there's some events you will just have gotten back, because we're pre-general council now, so you'll just get back from general council.
Right.
And then fall is a busy time in the Alabama section.
Absolutely.
Can you highlight a couple things we need to be looking at?
And we can put it on the screen, but we want to encourage you. September, October and November. We got a lot going on. September, we're going to have men's retreat. We're going to have the women's retreat, and right on that is our regional tour, which is going to be great with Dr. Litchie this year. We'll tell you more about that later. And then we'll move over into October, and then we'll have the ministers gathering in the Smokies. So we're just ready for an exciting fall.
Yeah, it's actually my first time to get to go to the ministers gathering this year, and so I'm
you're gonna love it.
Oh gosh, I'm excited.
And hey, it's going to be good. George and Phyllis Sawyer are going to be our speakers.
Good. I'm looking forward to that. Well, again, thank you for sitting down and talking to us, and we'll see where we go next.
Thank you, Missionary Michael. Appreciate it, buddy. Thanks.